Reborn, just 10 days before my wedding, I have only one goal in this life: to avoid Lance. In my previous life, Lance and I had been together since our school days, progressing from wearing uniforms to exchanging wedding vows. However, when Lance turned 60, he asked for a divorce. He claimed he wanted to experience a romantic relationship with his first love in his later years. I refused, and in response, he hurled a teacup at me. His hair had turned white, and the fierce look in his eyes was unforgettable as he declared, "Lillian, you chased after me relentlessly when you were young. I gave you marriage and children. Be grateful and stop acting unappreciative." Later, I discovered my discarded postgraduate admission notice in the trash. While smoothing out its creases and wiping the stains away with my sleeves, I couldn't help but burst into tears of joy. I had been reborn. In my former life, I gave up graduate school because Lance convinced me to. We married, and I found an ordinary job. Soon after, I became pregnant and quit due to severe pregnancy symptoms. By the time my son went to high school and moved to a dormitory, I returned to work. However, I'd lost touch with my university major and lacked employable skills, so I could only take on physically demanding jobs like cashiering and stocking shelves. I never prioritized my education or career in my previous life, thinking that marrying the man I loved and raising our children would bring me happiness. But Lance shattered that belief when he announced his desire to leave me for his first love. I was stunned and firmly refused. He retaliated by throwing a cup of hot tea at me, accompanied by words that pierced my soul. "I must give Delilah a wedding. Lillian, you pursued me with such devotion when you were younger. I gave you marriage and children. Be content and stop being so ungrateful." It was then that I realized Lance never truly loved me. I had spent 38 years trapped in what I thought was happiness, only to recognize it as self-delusion. Lance abandoned me without hesitation, marrying Delilah shortly afterward. My son, along with his wife and children, would visit Lance and Delilah during holidays, with my grandchildren addressing Delilah as Grandma. One mid-autumn festival, I called my son, hoping he would bring his family to visit me. He refused outright. "Dad and Aunt Delilah have pensions. They buy things and give red envelopes to my wife and kids. What can you offer them?" he asked bluntly. From that point until my death, I had no contact with my son. When I passed away in a hospital bed, no one claimed my body. The staff had given me priority treatment, despite my inability to pay, using my phone to contact my son, who never responded. As I took my final breath, only a nurse stood by my side. At that moment, I loathed myself for being so consumed by love and neglecting my own worth. But now I've been granted another chance. I still have my postgraduate admission notice and haven't married Lance yet. Everything can change. With 10 days remaining until my wedding and 15 until the start of graduate school, I knew my first step: cancel the wedding. After lunch, I received a call from Lance. "Lillian, meet me at the Starbucks on West 2nd Road. I have something to tell you," he said. The Starbucks was conveniently located between our homes and had been a frequent date spot in my past life. Although my previous self would have agreed without hesitation, I now deliberated before replying, "Okay, let's meet." It was time to talk about ending the engagement. When I arrived, I saw not only Lance, but also Delilah. I recognized her from Lance's freshman birthday party in college, where he introduced her as his childhood friend. Later, I learned from his roommate that they had been high school sweethearts who broke up but remained close friends. "Sister Lillian," Delilah greeted me warmly. "Lance has been so busy preparing for your wedding. It makes me want to get married, too. Congratulations to both of you." I smiled faintly, choosing not to respond. Instead, I said, "How about I give you the position of the bride?" Delilah's eyes widened in panic. She glanced nervously at Lance before waving her hands dismissively. "No, no, Lance loves you. You shouldn't joke about such things," she said with a charming smile. The atmosphere grew tense. Lance quickly interjected, "Yes, Lillian, you love me too much to give up your place as the bride. Delilah is like a sister to me. She'll pass the civil service exam and marry a rich, handsome man someday." When Lance looked at Delilah, his eyes were filled with tenderness. After Delilah excused herself to pick up their order, Lance turned to me. "Let's keep the wedding simple. Everyone knows how much you love me. There's no need for extravagance. Also, the betrothal gift of 66,000 yen you requested is too much. My family can only manage 28,000 yen. Let's cancel the name-changing ceremony too." Delilah said none of her friends had one when they got married. I felt nothing as he spoke. In my previous life, I had loved Lance so blindly that I agreed to forego an engagement ceremony. Our families only had one meal together, during which his parents gave me a red envelope containing 200 wen, while my parents gave him 1,000 wen. I even convinced my mother not to mind their paltry gift. This time, I didn't care to appease him. I replied firmly, "Let's cancel the wedding." Lance froze, then stammered, "What did you say?" "I don't want to marry you anymore," I repeated. He looked shocked, but quickly regained his composure, his tone turning sharp. "Are you joking? We've been together since freshman year. You've wanted to marry me since junior year. My parents already booked the hotel. How can we cancel now? Can you even live without me?" I was about to respond when Delilah returned, placing a glass of water in front of me. "Lance said you're on a diet, so we didn't order cake or coffee for you," she said sweetly. I sneered inwardly. Lance had often made decisions for me without my input. I resolved to stand my ground, but he cut me off. "Go home and discuss the betrothal gift with your parents. If 28,000 wen isn't enough, I can push my family to offer 36,000 wen, but no more." That evening, I told my parents about my decision to cancel the wedding and pursue graduate studies. They were surprised but supportive once I explained my reasons. "Should we talk to Lance's family, or will you handle it?" my mother asked. "I'll handle it," I assured them. That night, I lay in bed chatting with my college roommate, Yvonne, about my plans to attend graduate school. Back then, I had joined my roommates in preparing for the postgraduate entrance exams out of camaraderie. All four of us passed. The next day, I unexpectedly encountered Lance near my community entrance. "Have you discussed the betrothal gift with your family?" he asked. When I shook my head, he added, "If 28,000 is too little, let's make it 50,000. I didn't reply right away. Lance continued, "Let's skip the part about changing how you address my parents, as we discussed earlier. There won't be any extra money for that. If you have any other thoughts or requests, just let me know, and I'll consider them before deciding." I had no thoughts or requests at all, but I was curious. "Why did you raise the amount to 50,000? Also, didn't you say we should keep the wedding simple? Why are you suddenly asking for my opinion again?" Lance hesitated for a moment before replying, "I think your parents worked hard to raise you, so it's only fair to increase the betrothal gift. I still believe the wedding should be simple, but we've been together for so long, and it wouldn't be right to only follow my ideas. I want to hear yours too." Suppressing a smile, I responded, "Cancel the wedding. I don't want to get married anymore." Lance didn't panic. His face showed only resignation. "Lillian, you said the same thing yesterday. I'm not canceling the wedding. If there's something my family or I didn't do well, tell me, and we can work it out." For the first time, I saw seriousness in Lance's eyes. Before I could reply, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and I caught a glimpse of the caller ID before he answered. "I'm with Lillian," Lance said into the phone. His expression immediately changed, becoming tense and anxious. "How could this happen? Don't worry, don't move, I'll be right there." Without another word to me, he turned and ran off. He didn't even say goodbye. Watching his retreating figure, the corners of my mouth lifted slightly. Go find your love. May the two of you stay entangled forever. Since Lance refused to believe me when I told him twice that I wanted to cancel the wedding, I decided to stop trying for now. There were 5 days left until the wedding and 10 until the new semester began. I planned to visit the mall to buy 2 new outfits for school. While shopping, I received a text from Lance. "Where are you?" I replied, "At the mall." "Tell me the exact location." "I'll come find you," he responded. I thought it would be a good opportunity to discuss canceling the wedding, so I sent him my location. The women's clothing section on the second floor. As I browsed through the racks, I suddenly heard a familiar voice. "Do you think my breasts are bigger than your girlfriend's?" It was Delilah. Curious, I pushed aside the clothes in front of me to see Delilah wrapped in the arms of a man. One hand rested on her waist and the other on her chest. "Yeah, yours are a D, right?" the man asked. "I know, a C," Delilah flirted, drawing circles on his chest with her finger. "Let me let you touch them, and you can buy me something." "Okay, pick whatever you want. I've got plenty of money," the man replied. Delilah kissed him on the lips, but as she adjusted her clothes, she noticed me watching. Her face turned pale, and she hurriedly straightened her appearance before stomping over to me. "Lillian, what did you see? What did you hear?" she demanded. I looked at her anger-filled, panicked face and said coldly, "Did I say I wanted to interfere?" Delilah opened her mouth, but couldn't find the words. I had no interest in her affairs, but I had inadvertently witnessed this scene. Ignoring her, I turned to leave. As I stepped out of the store, I saw Lance approaching from the corridor. Delilah noticed him too. She suddenly yelled, "Brother Ken, deal with her!" Before I could react, Delilah grabbed my arm. "Sister Lillian, how could you cheat on Lance?" "How could you do this to him?" she shouted dramatically. Confused, I said nothing. The man behind Delilah stepped forward, pried her hand off me, and stood protectively in front of me. "Who are you and why are you touching my woman?" he demanded. Delilah stumbled and fell to the ground weakly. As Lance reached us, she cried out, "Lance! Sister Lillian is cheating on you with this man. He even pushed me down to protect her." Lance glared at me before helping Delilah up. "I know, I heard everything," he said, his tone accusatory. Turning to me, he asked, "What's going on, Lillian? You keep saying you love me, yet you're involved with this man. Is he the reason you want to cancel the wedding? Did you cheat on me?" I was about to reply when the strange man spoke up. "Yes, we've checked into hotels more than once. If you know what's good for you, you'll let her go." I stared at him in disbelief, wishing I could strangle him. But before I could react, Lance lunged at him, throwing punches. "Bastard! She's my fiancée. Even if she cheated, I'll still marry her. You'll never have her." I watched indifferently as Delilah frantically tried to intervene. The commotion quickly drew security guards and police. In the mall's security office, we explained the situation. When asked if Delilah and Lance's story was true, I firmly denied it. "I don't know this man. He's not involved with me in any way." The man wilted under questioning, but Delilah doubled down on her accusations. "I saw them together. He even touched her," she said, feigning embarrassment. Lance looked furious. "I believe Delilah," he said. Her smug expression hardened my resolve. I had thought about admitting to the accusations, just to force the wedding's cancellation, but seeing Delilah's antics changed my mind. I wouldn't take the blame. The police reviewed the surveillance footage, clearing my name. Delilah offered pitiful excuses to Lance, who comforted her without reproach. "It's fine. Just stay away from that guy," he said. As we left, Lance said to me, "Since you didn't betray me, the wedding will proceed as planned. Delilah's upset, so I'll take her home. You can get home on your own." That evening, I convinced my parents to take a trip and booked their tickets. They left the next day. Afterward, I met with Yvonne, my college roommate, and shared everything that had happened at the mall. I also told her about my plans for the future. Yvonne was fully supportive after hearing my plan. "Lance has treated you poorly so many times. I told you before he wasn't good for you, but you wouldn't listen. And Delilah? She's the ultimate schemer. Lillian, I'm so glad you finally come to your senses and are ready to dump that jerk. I'll help you. Once we teach them a lesson, we'll cut ties with them forever." I nodded, and we started discussing the details together. That evening, I contacted a photographer and offered him 3 times the usual rate to follow my instructions and document everything on the wedding day. I also hired 2 additional photographers online at a high price to follow Lance and Delilah starting the next day. Their task was to capture any suspicious behavior. I was confident that within 4 days, I would have all the evidence I needed, as neither Lance nor Delilah was particularly discreet. There wasn't much else to do but wait for the wedding day. However, the day before the wedding, something unexpected happened. After having a simple meal near my home, I was ambushed by Delilah and 3 men as I walked back. Though it was only 6 in the evening and the street lamps were on, there were many dark spots along the road. Delilah dragged me into a corner, and when I tried to resist, the 3 men surrounded me. "Lillian, I really don't understand what's so special about you," Delilah sneered. "Lance spoils me endlessly, but he still insists on marrying you. I've been trying to seduce him these past 2 days, but he's stubborn." Her tone turned venomous. Then, stepping closer, she pinched my chin and lifted my face. "You're getting married tomorrow. You'll probably have your face all done up beautifully. Tell me, what if I ruin it right now? Wouldn't you be humiliated tomorrow?" Delilah's smile sent chills down my spine. Though I remained outwardly calm, inside I was terrified. There was no one around to help, and I couldn't even call for assistance. My body trembled slightly, but I refused to show fear. Suddenly, Delilah let go of my chin and took a step back. "Take out your weapons and scratch her face," she ordered the men. My heart leaped into my throat as one man raised a knife. Just then, I heard a familiar voice. "Hey, honey, isn't that Lillian?" Relief flooded me as I recognized the voice of my second aunt. I quickly turned toward the sidewalk and saw her and my second uncle approaching. "Second uncle! Second aunt! It's me! Help me!" I shouted. Delilah and the men realized their plan had failed. "Let's go," Delilah ordered angrily. They fled down another road before my second uncle and aunt reached me. "Lillian, are you okay?" my second uncle asked, worried. I shook my head to reassure them. They checked me over to make sure I wasn't hurt before relaxing. "Do you know those people?" my second aunt asked. "No," I lied. I didn't want to explain the real situation as it would involve sharing too much personal information. They seemed like hooligans trying to rob me. People like that will end up in jail sooner or later, my second aunt said. It's not safe for a young woman to be out alone at night. Don't go out after dark anymore. I nodded obediently. Your parents posted pictures from their trip to Xi'an. Are you safe staying at home alone? My second aunt asked. Why don't you stay with us tonight? Your cousin is home doing her summer homework. You can share her room. No, I'm fine at home, I replied. Seeing my determination, they didn't insist. All right then. We'll walk you downstairs, my second aunt said. I couldn't refuse, so I agreed. That evening, before going to bed, I reviewed the photos sent by the paparazzi I had hired and felt quite satisfied. I also replayed the recordings I'd gathered and felt even more confident. When Delilah stopped me on the road, I had discreetly activated the recording function on my phone by pressing the volume button 3 times. Her threats and orders were all captured as evidence. The next day, the wedding day arrived. The ceremony was scheduled for noon. Lance and I had agreed to arrive separately. He would handle on-site arrangements and greet guests while I got ready in the makeup room. We planned to meet at the ceremony. When I arrived at the hotel by taxi, Yvonne and the photographer were already waiting for me at the entrance. We went to the makeup room together. I had hired my own makeup artist, as Lance's family had insisted that wedding makeup was the bride's responsibility. In the makeup room, I discussed the plan with Yvonne and the photographer. Yvonne, follow the plan. Go to the venue and bribe the person in charge to live stream the footage from the photographer's camera, I instructed. Yeah, no problem. I've prepared generous red envelopes. No one can resist money, Yvonne said confidently. Turning to the photographer, I asked, can your camera handle live streaming? Yes, I'll show your friend how to connect it. She can control the stream from her phone or a computer, he replied. Satisfied, I nodded. Just follow Lance and record everything. I already told him about the follow-up shoot, and he agreed. The photographer confirmed, and we went over potential scenarios before Yvonne and the photographer left the room. I didn't begin my makeup, but waited for the right moment. At 11:40, I stood unnoticed in the wedding venue, wearing a simple outfit. The big screen displayed live footage from the photographer's camera, showing the detailed arrangements of the venue, flower baskets, decorations, and Chinese characters for happiness. The camera moved steadily forward. The guests, mostly Lance's relatives, sat sparsely around the venue. At the main table, Lance's parents chatted with his uncle and aunt, his mother smiling happily. Suddenly, the footage on the screen shifted to a room, and a voice was heard. Lon, this isn't appropriate. It was Lance's voice. The venue fell silent as everyone turned to the screen. The camera focused on a wall, but the voices continued. What's inappropriate about it? Delilah's voice replied. We've already kissed before. This is just reminiscing. Lance muttered something, followed by the sound of kissing. Then Delilah gasped. Enough! Today is my wedding. I'm going to the venue now. It's not time yet, Delilah said. Lance, don't marry Lillian. I love you. Lillian loves me, Lance replied. And then make me your mistress, Delilah demanded. Do you like my breasts? The conversation escalated until the screen suddenly showed their faces, caught in an intimate moment. Delilah panicked. What are you filming? She cried. Yvonne cut the live stream, leaving the screen black. The venue erupted in stunned whispers. Straightening my posture, I walked onto the stage. Lance's parents stared at me in shock. Taking the microphone, I addressed the crowd. Hello, everyone. I'm Lillian, the bride. Since you've all seen the footage, there's nothing more to explain. I hereby announce that the wedding is canceled. Lance and I are finished. Turning to Lance's parents, I continued, My family didn't accept your betrothal gifts. I only received 200 wen from you, which I'll return now. Lance received 1,000 wen from my parents. Keep it as a gift. Yvonne stepped forward, placing the prepared 200 wen on the table in front of Lance's parents. The stunned silence of the room spoke volumes. I continued, As for the wedding expenses, since your son let me down, your family will bear them. After saying that, I turned around, put the microphone back, stepped down from the stage, and left the venue. Walking towards the hotel exit, I felt an incredible sense of relief and happiness. I had made 2 plans for today. The first was to rely on luck, follow Lance, and catch him red-handed. That way I could capitalize on the situation and end everything easily. The second was to publicly display intimate photos of Lance and Delilah on the stage. These included pictures of Delilah touching Lance inappropriately at a restaurant, Lance hugging Delilah in a shopping mall corner, and Delilah putting her hand inside Lance's shirt by the roadside. I also had photos of Delilah kissing and groping other men at bars, as well as audio recordings of Delilah threatening me. My plan had been to throw these at Lance, cancel the wedding publicly, and end things once and for all. This way, not only would the wedding be canceled, But Lance's scandal would be exposed to his family and friends, and he'd see Delilah's true character. It would be a gift for them both. Fortunately, I didn't need to use the photos or recordings because luck was on my side. Lance, goodbye. As I stepped out of the hotel and got into a taxi, I saw Lance running after me. As the car started moving, I heard him shout faintly, "Lillian, wait! It's not what it looks like. I still want to marry you." I didn't look back. Instead, I lowered my head and sent a message to Yvonne. "Is it safe?" Yvonne replied quickly, "Yes, it's safe. The photographer and I have already left through the west entrance. No one from Lance's family stopped us." I felt relieved. This had been part of our plan, to leave separately, with me exiting alone and Yvonne leaving with the photographer. Shortly after, I received another message from Yvonne. When we left, Lance's mother took a few ants to find Delilah. Lance's grandfather fainted from anger. I heard that Lance's grandfather had been a respected figure in the Education Bureau before retiring. By the time my parents returned from their trip to Xi'an, I had already packed for my new semester. The day before school started, my parents and I traveled to Chongqing, where I would pursue my postgraduate studies. That night, we enjoyed a hot pot meal together. It was spicy, but incredibly satisfying. The next day, my parents helped me register at school, set up my dorm room, and took a stroll around campus before I sent them off to the airport. A new environment marked a fresh beginning. Over time, I became familiar with my supervisor and got to know senior students and classmates. The next time I saw Lance was during the winter vacation of my first year in graduate school, just before the spring festival. One day, while heading out to buy roast duck near my home, I found him waiting at the entrance of my community. "Lillian, I have so much to say to you. I was wrong before. I'm sorry." "I shouldn't have been so close to Delilah," he said, looking haggard. "After you left, I realized that you're the one I truly love. Before, I thought you loved me more than I loved you, but now I know I can't live without you. Let's get back together. If you don't want to marry now, it's fine. I'll wait until you graduate. I'll work hard to support you and pay for your studies. After you graduate, I'll give your family a betrothal gift of 200,000 yuan." I listened to his pleas and looked at his disheveled appearance. Smiling, I replied charmingly, "Sorry, Lance. I'll never get back together with you. Don't come to see me again. I don't want to see you." Then, I turned and walked away with grace. After graduating from postgraduate school, I secured a position at a listed company in Ningbo through campus recruitment. After 3 years, I was promoted to department director and bought a small apartment in the city. Though I remained single, I was thriving in my career and finances, feeling confident and content with my life. A year later, during a work dinner, I met Ethan, a senior from my postgraduate days. A native of Ningbo, he had worked abroad for 5 years and had just returned 3 months earlier. "Lillian, it's fate that we meet again. Let's exchange contact information and keep in touch," Ethan said with a warm smile. I nodded and we exchanged numbers and added each other on WeChat. 6 months later, after getting to know each other better, Ethan confessed his love to me. I admired his gentle and refined manner, his simplicity, and his sincerity. When he said, "It's my honor to win your affection. I'll cherish you and do my best to love and protect you," I agreed to be with him. A year later, Ethan and I got married. When our son was 5 years old, I returned to my parents' home for a class reunion with Yvonne. There, I heard about Lance. Lance had divorced. It turned out his 10-year-old son wasn't biologically his. His wife, Delilah, had been unfaithful and often went to bars, maintaining ambiguous relationships with other men. Lance discovered the truth when his son was injured during gym class, and a blood transfusion revealed incompatible blood types. After the divorce, Lance fell into a downward spiral. He quit his job, racked up online loans, and often posted sentimental messages online, accompanied by pictures of alcohol and cigarettes. Yvonne and I exchanged a knowing look and smiled faintly. Just then, a classmate asked, "Was Lance's wife named Delilah?" "I saw a viral video yesterday of a wife catching her husband's mistress at a hotel. The mistress was being beaten while someone yelled, 'Delilah!' I stopped listening to the gossip and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window to admire the view. Yvonne joined me. "I heard your son is good at spoken English," she said. I smiled and nodded. "Yes, Ethan has been teaching Cece since he was little." Cece was our son's nickname. At that moment, my phone rang. It was Ethan. "Honey, are you almost done?" "My car's parked outside the restaurant," he said. I smiled. "I'll be out soon." As I prepared to leave, Yvonne said, "Your happiness is written all over your face. Stay this happy, Lillian. You deserve all the good things in life." I hugged her. Thank you, Teacher Yang. Let's both be happy. On the way home, I looked at Ethan, who was driving carefully. My heart swelled with love. Even after all this time, I cherished him deeply. Honey, it's so nice to have you, I said sincerely. At a traffic light, Ethan reached out and gently touched my head. Silly girl, you're my lucky charm, he replied affectionately. The end.